Morning.
Yep.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar from Annika Digital. It's quite unbelievable, but we are not only in February, March time celebrating our 18th birthday, but we would have been doing these webinars for 5 years since the beginning of COVID. So as you can imagine, it's nearly coming up to our 5th anniversary for our webinars, but our 18th birthday party. So it's great to be here with you all today. I'm actually with Tony Ogby, who's my co-host. Most of you will recognise Tony. He's here nearly every week. And Martin Jones, who I just can't believe has been here nearly a year, and this is going to be his first webinar. So morning, Martin.
Morning.
I've given you a lot of hack about this morning. Martin is going to introduce himself, but he's going to be talking about alternative paid media platforms to consider after exhausting your Google Ads. I was just explaining before we went live that this is now my second favourite subject instead of my first favourite subject, because generative AI has overtaken paid media for first time in 25 years. We're going to pass over to the polls, a little bit of housekeeping. The video will be available in a couple of hours. You can also go to the handouts to download the presentation. So, Lucy's saying, wishing you good luck. That's nice. Also, when we start the presentation, you can expand the screen. There's 2 arrows top right. So without further ado, over to you, Tony.
Good morning, everyone. So we have just one poll question today, just to understand where people are currently and if you're using PPC in your company. So 1 second. Then we should be able to see it now. So the question goes, are you or your company currently using any PPC platforms? Number 1 will be, I'm currently not working, or I work for a company that does not use PPC, or you use Google Ads, or you use Bing or MSN ads, or we use Meta ads or LinkedIn ads, or we use TikTok or other paid social ads. If you use Reddit or Quora, I feel if people still use that, or Metro, TripAdvisor, and other directory ads, and Spotify, Acast, and audio ads. We can see most people are coming in.
There's a few more. There's video, image, and display.
Yes, or you use other video, image, or display ads and not included above, or if you use other shopping affiliates or marketing places.
And you can tick more than once, so please tick everything that applies. So, okay.
That's interesting. A lot of people are saying that their company that they use does not currently use PPC, or they're not currently working.
Yeah, we sort of expect that because in addition to our normal webinar audience every Friday, we do have a lot of our skills bootcamps learners, and there's quite a mix in there. So there's quite a lot of self-employed people on the bootcamp who may have tried some of these methods, but then there's a lot of people that are actually looking for jobs as well. So they're going to be interested in this because obviously there's a lot of jobs in paid media and they do pay quite well. And paid media is a great area, particularly if you're quite good at numbers and you're quite creative, then you will find this a great area to go into. Okay, now as expected, we have got a lot of Google, 22%, which is great. But I was expecting a lot more Meta ads. It's only 11. And Bing's quite high too. I mean, that's a third of the people that are doing Google ads are also using Bing. Bing's not normally as popular as Google ads, although it does have some advantages for things like Netflix ads and stuff that you can do, which I'm sure that Martin will mention. A few of you are doing LinkedIn, few of you are doing TikTok. Some shopping ads and affiliate and marketplace, things like Amazon ads, really popular. Yeah, I think that gives us a really good idea. I think that's great for you, Martin, because you can sort of get an idea of who's in the audience. But it looks like about just under half have not done anything. So you might just have to do a little bit of a quick intro into what PPC is. But we've got at least 20% of the people that have done some form of Google ads or something before.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to get rid of our cameras and pass over to you. I'll just make sure everything's okay, and then I'll turn my mic off. So Tony's going to turn his camera off as well, and then over to you, Martin.
Amazing. I'll keep my camera on, providing internet stays with me. Yes. Good morning, everybody. So as Anne mentioned, yeah, I mean, welcome to what I hope will be a very useful sort of 50 minutes or an hour for you. I'm going to cover the topic of alternative pay media platforms, you know, that aren't Google Ads. As you say, lots of people using different ones as well. So that's good to see. That's why we do those polls at the beginning. You know, we do love Google Ads, or you hate Google Ads, depending on where you are, your current gripes with their changes. But part of my job as a marketing consultant is to sort of build out a much more diverse or longer term strategy for clients. So I'll go into a bit of what I consider when I'm doing this in this webinar. I'm going to move on to the about me, so I can talk about myself for a minute or two. So who am I? So, I mean, I am a senior paid media strategist. I joined Annika in March last year. So coming up to a year now. Prior to that, I've been, you know, I've worked in digital marketing for over a decade now. But paid media, agency side for paid media, the last 5 years has been my experience. Prior to that, I've worked in-house, I've worked freelance. So I've kind of got a broad spectrum of experience across multiple verticals and multiple channels, but also I know what it's like to be in-house working on paid media and digital marketing, as well as agency side, and then working for myself and freelance as well. So it means my breadth of experience, I kind of understand more people and their current gripes and their current issues that they face based on the position they're in at the moment. So as I said, I've worked from enterprise clients to SM, it's a small and medium businesses, so and even startups. So I've worked with some startups as well. I mean, how much more can I talk about myself? But I've got a track record of gaining results, you know, for clients from e-commerce to SaaS. So that's B2B, software as a service. And I've, across my career, my work has helped achieve, you know, multiple agency awards throughout my career. So that's enough about me. Always a bit shameless self-promotion there, but there you go. I've got to introduce myself. So that's who I am. Hopefully I've convinced you I know what I'm talking about. But let's see. A little bit about Annika. So just let you know, I might be new to Annika, but you know, Annika's certainly not new to me. So I've worked alongside people from Annika before at previous roles. You know, I've crossed paths with Annika team members multiple times at conferences and various events. You know, we've been around, as Anne said, we have to update this slide because it's 18 years this year. But you know, there's also a second arm to Annika, you know, that is the training side of it, which if a lot of you are learners, you'll know about this already. But so we don't just do the client management for digital marketing, you know, and as a general business, but we also have the training arm to it, you know, which most of the employees, including myself, are involved in. It's maybe my first webinar, but for Annika, but it's not my 18th birthday in Feb. There you go, as Anne is saying. But yeah, it may be my first webinar for Annika, but I've been involved in the DMI training and stuff. Some of you learners may have seen me before. I don't know if you have, but you may have done. So yeah, it's a little bit about Annika. So we're busy. We're always busy, and Anne can attest to that. We're always doing stuff. We're everywhere. I mean, there's events coming up as well, aren't there, Anne? I won't go into too much detail with them, but there are ones coming up. So yeah. A quick agenda, just to give you an idea of, you know, what we're going to go through in this presentation, in this webinar. So introductions, which I've kind of done already. So then I'm going to talk about a bit when you can identify how to expand into new channels, because I think that is just speaking to clients. And when I have conversations with people who are, you know, working their own business, they're like, well, when do I expand? I don't understand when I'm supposed to go from just Google Ads or Meta and go into a new channel. When we're identifying that need, there is a challenge that they tend to face. No, I'm not 18. No, no, I'm not 18. Yeah. Yeah, no, I wish I was 18. Yeah, that would turn the clock back a bit, but there you go. Yes. So I'm going to stop looking at the chat because I'm just going to get sidetracked. But yeah. And then I'll do, you know, I'll talk a bit about why do the best marketing strategies use more than Google Ads. Some of you may already understand why, but I'll go into a little bit more detail of why I suggest we do it and give you some real key sort of points of, okay, this is what you can do and can't do if you are just focusing on one channel. And then I'll go into the platforms to consider, and I'll give you sort of a breakdown of a list of sort of the pros and cons for a lot of these platforms. Some of them, if you're working on them, you'll know them. Some of them you might never have heard of before, and some of them you may not even know exist. So yeah. And then I'll go into a conclusion where I'll sum up and I'll give you basically the key takeaways and what we've learned during the webinar. That's clear for everybody. So first and foremost, when do we need to expand into new channels? So, I've done introductions, so I'm going to jump straight into it because that's kind of the big question, right? But as I mentioned, a lot of clients I speak to, they struggle with this. When is the right time to try an expansion? So hopefully I'm going to help answer that here. So as I mentioned, there are a few things to help you spot when you need to expand to a new channel. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you what they are. But these are sort of the key first things I will look out for when I'm auditing an account or I'm working on an account or I'm speaking to a client. These are the questions I will generally ask them. So the first one, number one, is you're seeing diminishing returns. So let's say you're only running Google Ads, and if you began to see your investment in Google Ads become disproportionately expensive, and the key point here is you've ruled out possible optimization factors or problems, then it's likely you're exhausting your audience on Google Ads. So if you've ruled out those optimization issues, but you can't seem to grow at healthy ROI anymore, ROI is return on investment, by the way. I will use acronyms throughout this. Anything I say that no one understands, please just drop a message in the chat and I'll explain it, or Anne can explain it. She's up on the acronyms, but as paid media, we use a lot of acronyms. So yeah, and abbreviations. So you need to be looking outside of that platform if you're seeing diminishing returns, because if the investment is tailing off, you're always going to get a diminishing return the more and more you invest. But if you're at the point where it's just not profitable to expand any more budget into Google Ads, then it's likely to look beyond that platform. Number two, which is something that a lot of people tend not to actually consider until someone mentions it to them. So if you're over reliant on Google Ads, so if 70, 80, or even 90% of your revenue is coming from one channel, that is a problem. You need to look at diversifying those inbound revenue streams to protect your business. And the reason why I like to make clients aware of this, even though they don't like to hear it, because they're like, well, why wouldn't I put more money in this channel? It's making me money. It's like, being so reliant on one channel is very dangerous. If something happens to that channel, the revenue dries up, you're in a very rocky position as a business. And in my career, I've seen it go as bad as it can go, basically, where the business had to close because of an issue exactly like this. And we obviously want to avoid that if we can. Nobody wants to be in that position. So being heavily reliant on one channel is a bad thing. Another one just to mention, quite a key one, is you're not getting any new customers. So if you're only getting repeat purchases, then your business is not growing, and it's likely that your prospecting isn't reaching the new customers within that channel you're using within Google Ads. Why is that a problem? Well, because new customers are the number one indicator of a growing market share for a business. So if you're not getting any, your audience becomes more and more finite every year. So pretty soon, you're going to be in a position where you have to look at making serious cutbacks because you're not getting new customers. Repeat customers are great. We love repeat customers. That's great. We do want them, and we want to foster loyalty with them so that they only ever buy from you. If we could have our way, they'd only ever buy your product or service, and they'd always come to you from one time ever purchasing from you. That's great. We want to foster that, but you need new customers as well. They are the key to growth. Most businesses want to grow, if not all. So yeah, it is a key thing to look out for. If you're not getting any new customers, which requires some analysis, of how many are we just getting repeat purchases, that's a problem. It needs solving. Sorry, there's a delay on my click here. There we go. And then there's another one, which is some of the Google networks just aren't suitable for you. So if, for example, the Google Display Network doesn't really meet your requirements, but you may be in a position where like, oh, well, we've got to use Google Ads for display. It's the only one we know. Well, it's like, well, because you don't know of any other platforms that can do it better. If it doesn't meet your requirements, then, the answer is to move that investment to a channel that does. Not a nice, easy, sort of simple solution for that one, I would say. You want to go to a platform that does offer what you need. And I do want to make it clear here, I did mention it in the introduction, that the best marketing strategies include a mix of channels with separate strengths, which are all working towards the same overall objective for a business. So I guess another one I would add on here is the most obvious reason to expand channels, you could say, is that you haven't done so yet. You're only using one channel. That's kind of a big indicator for me that you should be looking at other channels. So I'll move on to this question. So why do the best marketing strategies use more than just Google Ads? Well, because, even though Google isn't everywhere at all times. Now, I know it feels like it is. It feels quite insidious sometimes. It's there everywhere and it knows everything about us. But trust me, they are not everywhere, particularly when you come looking at advertising and platforms and how to reach customers. They're not everywhere. They like to think they are. They make out they are. Everyone might think they are, but they're not. And it's important to realize that because, well, I have a number for you, which is, again, sorry, there's just a delay on the clicks. 8. So that's the average number of touch points it takes to convince someone to purchase. And again, that's averages are averages for a reason. And it, of course, depends on your industry, the sale value of the product or service, as well as where that person is in the buyer journey. And it's actually, when I look at it, always find out new numbers in this. It's actually up to 50 touch points if we're sort of more inclusive of every vertical across, national and Europe. It can be up to 50 touch points. And I mean, the question there is, how many people search for something on Google search 50 times before buying it? I certainly don't, so I guess the question for me then is, so where do these touch points happen? Well, they don't only happen on Google search. Google search can be a touch point, but they don't just happen on Google search. So if you're limited to only Google Ads, then you're not reaching those people where you need to reach them. So it's kind of important to think of that. And we, as humans, we tend to think of buying something as a very linear process in our minds quite often. I was actually told once by a friend of mine who works in neuroscience that our brain actually filters information out and makes us think like that, because basically to stop us going insane, I think, processing too much information, but which is what I found interesting. But that gives you an insight to the conversations I have with my friends. We're quite boring people, or interesting to me, but there you go. But that means basically we tend to see it as we want to buy X product. We take an action to find X product. We buy X product. But in most cases, it isn't like that. Customer journeys are not like that. And they're even less like that in 2025 now, 2025. I can't believe we're in 2025. But yeah, even less like that now that people have, access to new technology. People use more screens than ever to do the same thing. People can shop and buy things from their TV now. They have their phone, they have laptops, they have tablets. There are various different things. There's Apple Watches and things like that. So people will look at more screens and a more variation of screens and touch points areas than they ever did before. It used to be quite simple. Back in, when I first started, most people bought on desktop and they all went to Google for it. It was a simpler time. But yeah. So why it's important to realize is let's actually look at what a touch point is, because I've said that word a lot, and not actually explained what a touch point could be, because a lot of people will think it's an interaction with an ad. So what is a touch point? So a touch point is, anything that can influence the buyer's journey. So this could be, but it's not limited to these, someone seeing your brand video. Doesn't mean they've interacted with it, but they've seen it. Someone reading a page on your blog or another blog that mentions your products, for instance. Someone seeing a post on social media. It could be an organic post. It could have been shared by one of their friends. They might not follow your social media platforms directly. Someone reading a review about your product or service, someone requesting samples or prices. That's obviously quite a strong touch point, indicates a commercial intent there. But then someone hearing about your product by word of mouth, and obviously it's not something we can track, word of mouth, but it's has one of the biggest trust factors attached to any touch point, really. If a friend recommends something to you, you're more likely to buy it or use it. And these touch points are all accumulating together to drive the end result. So, and obviously this isn't every touch point, but when we start thinking about these as combined sort of valuable actions, you come to quite quickly, I would hope, that a conclusion that Google Ads alone isn't enough to reach your entire marketable audience, or I'll use the word TAM sometimes, guys. That just means total addressable market. So, for example, I mean, the key thing to call out is if you're only using Google Ads, is you can't reach social media users via Google Ads. So you've lost all chances to influence them there if you're not advertising on social media platforms. So, and I mentioned this first because I have another percentage for you, a number for you, but this one's a percentage. That's 81%. Now, that's the number of social media users that purchase directly on platform. So across all the social media, 81% of those people who do purchase directly on that platform. They do not leave Meta, they do not leave Instagram to buy, they do not leave TikTok. They buy on that platform, which means Google Ads doesn't reach them. And obviously it varies from platform to platform. Meta's still leading the way because of its really high user base. And TikTok is kind of like the newest rising star. But the point is, it's a high percentage. It's 81%. And now I like to say this because I just like to point out this, but Google considers YouTube a social media platform. Now, I don't know if anyone agrees with that. I wouldn't. I wouldn't believe that's a social media platform. I don't categorize it as a social media platform. I understand it has some social element to it, but I would look at it as a video network platform more than anything else. But that begs the question, what are you missing out on? What else are you missing out on if you're just using Google Ads as the only channel for your marketing? And the short answer is, as I said, you're missing out on the opportunity to showcase your brand to interested parties, who are likely to buy and who will buy. 81% of people who do buy will buy on that platform. But it also goes further than that, because you're also missing out on any chance of improving sort of your organic brand uplift by limiting yourself to a reactive marketing approach, via the one channel. Google Ads is largely a reactive platform. And what a reactive platform is it requires an action by the user first. So it needs someone to use a keyword search and find that on search, or search and find your product on shopping. It requires an action by them first. So we would consider it reactive. They search for something, we show them your ad, we hope they buy it. So it's reactive. So, so how do we fix that? Well, we expand into other channels, and utilize a mix of different channels. So I'm going to jump into a few sort of the next platforms that I would consider. So just to give you an overview of some of these. So platforms to consider. I mean, the first one that's coming up, some of you have already said you're aware of it. Most of you are likely familiar with it, even if you've not run ads on it. So, and like you've said, some of you are running ads on the platform already. And it's fairly typical for people to think of Meta first when they look at channels for expansion from Google Ads. And there is a reason for that. It has the largest user base still of any social media platform. It also has a lot more, it's a lot more established than a lot of other social media platforms, at least in people's minds anyway. It's kind of like the Google Ads of social media, if you will, but let's look at a few of the pros and cons. I mean, I'll just for the start, ads run on social media platforms of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, if desired, you can set WhatsApp up. And anyone can set up a business account and run ads, providing you have a Meta page and a registered company, a Meta company page, that should be. But yeah, they're generally easy to set up. The complications comes with tracking, but we'll go into pros and cons there. So pros and cons, pros, I'll go through the pros first and I'll go through the cons. These are not all the pros and cons, but they're just some of the ones that I would pull out and call out. So for Meta, CPCs are often cheaper than Google Ads, Microsoft Ads and LinkedIn. Right? When I tell clients that, they normally jump at that. They love that. They're like, yes, cheaper, get it, right, do it. But there you go. You can reach your audience at all times without a direct action from the user, as they are passively browsing the platform. Again, so while Google Ads is very reactive, Meta Ads can be proactive. You know, you're reaching out to the people who are using the platform rather than them searching for you, because most people are not on Meta searching to buy something. There are multiple format ads, from text, image, video, and lead forms on Meta. Meta's generally got really, really good at that over the years. It used to be very bad, but there are lots of format ads now, various different, so you can suit, you know, how you want to advertise and where you want to advertise them to. They obviously push towards the more creative ad types, such as video and image and carousel images, because they get better engagement. People engage more with better looking ads rather than texts and stuff like that. But, you know, you can do it. The creative options on Meta are very diverse. And I don't say that lightly. They are quite diverse. You know, and now they've got the addition of the inclusion of AI generated images, frames, and sort of third party commerce creative options. So there are lots of various different third parties now who specialize in helping people improve their Meta Ads shopping feed by tweaking images so that they get better click-through rates and they get better conversion rates. And some of those platforms are really good. Some of them are quite basic, but, you know, some are obviously the really, really good ones tend to be a bit more expensive, but they are worth using. I've used a few in my time, and they are generally quite good, and you do see results from them. So the creative options on Meta are very good, and they're getting better. Cons. So the first one I'm going to mention is the attention span of audiences are very low on Meta. And that's because, you know, again, you need to capture their attention very quickly. But the reason their attention span is low is because it's proactive. They're not looking to buy something. They're just doom scrolling, or they're on Facebook watching cat videos, or, you know, whatever they're doing. You can all think about what you do on Facebook. You're watching videos. You're not there to buy something, as a general rule. So yeah, you do have to capture their attention very quickly, like within the first 2 seconds, because they will scroll straight past you. And it actually, I think it's lowered. Even Meta released a new sort of platform playbook that it's lower than 2 seconds now. So it has, your ads have to be good, which is why the creative options are there. Another con, I like to mention this as well because it requires constant optimization. Now you would think every channel kind of requires that, you know, but with that optimization, it requires some technical knowledge to achieve. So it's not sort of a thing that you can set and forget, kind of like that. It's not going to work like that. You can lose a lot of money if you set and forget it. It's not a set and forget platform strategy. And some of the technical knowledge, you know, for optimizations is required, which often some people lack. So they have to learn it. So, you know, there is that element to it. So it is a con of the platform. Tracking setup is simple, you know, but for any advanced tracking, you require technical knowledge again. So if we're going to look at server-side tracking, you know, and things like that, it requires more technical knowledge than the simple setting up of a pixel, for instance. So if you want to see the data that you can get from server-side, where you're ignoring cookies, that kind of thing, and we're not ignoring them, but you're bypassing cookies in a way that's still compliant, and you're, you know, filtering in things like revenue and that sort of thing directly into the platform again, and having it come through the shopping, you know, to improve that becomes quite technical quite quickly. So they don't make it easy to do that. But yeah, and then the creative, which is often something that I see and that a lot of people forget when they're advertising on Meta, is you need safe zones within the creative. So within your image ads and your video ads, because Meta obviously adds the call to action buttons. So like the shop now buttons and stuff like that on ads. So you need to be aware of those safe zones at the bottom, because otherwise that's going to cover your content. It's going to cover your creative. It's going to cover your image and your videos. And you don't want that. The ad looks pretty naff when you can't read what text is on there, or you can't see the image. People aren't going to click it. So it's just being aware of that. Sorry, yep. I was going to say, is there any questions on that before I sort of move on? No. Okay.
Yeah, I can answer those and bring them up at the end. I've just put what server-side tracking is in. So yeah, carry on.
Yeah, no problem. So the next platform I'm going to mention, and some of you have already said that you're using it. So, you know, that's good. That's good for me. But yeah, Microsoft Ads. So formerly Bing Ads. But yeah, it hasn't been Bing Ads for a while now. But there you go. Ads run on the Bing search engine, as well as search partners such as MSN and Yahoo. You know, anyone can have an account, providing you have a valid registered business and website. It's very, very similar to setting up a Google Ads account. It's basically the same. You just need to prove that you're a registered business. You have a website that you can send ads traffic to, and a payment method, really. So yeah, some of the pros and cons of them. So CPCs are often cheaper than Google Ads. As a general rule, it's considered that they're much cheaper than Google Ads. And AOVs, so average order values, are often up to 60% higher from Bing users. So people who do use the Bing search engine, they tend to buy more. There are a couple reasons for this. They tend to be more in a professional capacity. So because Bing search engine is more used within corporations than Google Chrome, for instance. So people were buying things at work or on the lunch break, and they're using their work computers to do so. And they tend to buy more. It's also the user base of Bing. The average age of them is actually higher, which means they usually have more disposable income. So their AOVs become higher because they can afford to spend more and buy more premium products. So it is something worth considering. Doesn't mean that, you know, Bing's unsuitable if you don't have a premium product. That's not the case at all. It's certainly not the case I see for my clients. But it's just a reason explaining why the AOVs are up to 60% higher from Bing users. A key pro that I like with Microsoft Ads is that campaigns can be directly imported from Google Ads to save on additional setup. So it is very, very good in that way. You can take your campaigns out of Google Ads, you can set up an import sheet, and it can go directly into Bing Ads, which saves you having to build the campaigns twice. There is a caveat to that I'll come on to on the cons, but it does save you a lot of setup time, which is great. If you're starting a brand new account, I like to mention this because not a lot of people are aware. You know, you can get credit vouchers of, I think it's about £500 at the moment, you know, which is reimbursed once you have spent that amount on Bing Ads. So you spend 500 on advertising, and there's no time limit on spending that. You could take the entire year to spend that, but then you'll get that £500 credited back. So it is, you know, it's another incentive to use it, really, particularly if you're already running Google Ads. I would say if you're running Google Ads, there's really no reason not to run Microsoft Ads, is what I would always say. You know, providing you have the budget, unless your budget's incredibly constrained and you can't, or you physically don't have the time to manage it, then I would say Microsoft Ads is kind of a no-brainer to expand to from Google Ads. A key thing, audiences can integrate with LinkedIn audiences, you know, due to both platforms being owned by Microsoft. And another thing to mention, Anne mentioned it briefly, I was going to mention it, is, yeah, Bing is also a very good way to enter into Netflix ads, as that sort of connected TV ads, just because the platforms, yeah, integrate with each other quite well. So it is a starting point if you want to do Netflix ads. Obviously, Netflix ads are a different ballgame altogether, but it is possible. So a few of the cons. So it has much lower search volume than Google Ads, and that's simply because less people use Bing search engine than they do Google search engine. So there is a trade-off there. You know, the CPCs are often cheaper because there's less competition, but it's because there's lower search volume as well. So that just needs to be kept in mind when you are running them. And it does require a technical setup, you know, which needs technical knowledge of tracking in the same way Google Ads does. The technical setup, you know, you are going to need some technical knowledge to get it set up and working, depending on what you want to track. And the caveat I said to here is that whilst you can import campaigns directly from Google Ads, you require a separate optimization to Google Ads. So it will increase your workload if you're running in tandem, just keeping that in mind. So yeah, because you'll have two channels to manage. Sounds a bit silly saying, of course, that's going to be more work, but they require separate optimizations. You can't just treat Microsoft Ads as if it's Google Ads. You optimize them differently. If used for e-commerce, so you will require a Bing Merchant Center account setup as well to run shopping ads. They're generally easy to set up. but it is something that a lot of people I've seen before when they're first starting out with Microsoft ads is they're like, oh, well, we're trying to run shopping ads and it won't let us. It's like, well, you haven't set up a merchant center. In the same way you need a merchant center for Google ads, you need one for Microsoft ads as well. So it's just an additional thing that needs setting up to run them. Sorry, moving on. LinkedIn ads. So I just realized that my screen is not caught up. Yeah, LinkedIn. Okay, yep. So LinkedIn ads, again, some of you may be aware of it. You might know it, especially if you're in the B2B space. If anybody's advertising the B2B space, then you're probably aware of LinkedIn ads. They run on the LinkedIn social media platform. Setup requires a business account, a company page, and there are lots of ad types to choose from. And most people can create an account with little difficulty. They do make it quite easy. You just need to go through the verification steps and that sort of thing. Pros. So pros of LinkedIn. Now, you can reach businesses in one of the most appropriate B2B social media platforms. And I don't say that lightly. LinkedIn is one of the best social media platforms for B2B. We're discounting directories and other things like that, which I'll come on to. But they have a very, very good audience targeting all the way down to job title and company names, which really the powerhouse there, if you're looking at larger enterprise, which may not be the case for anyone on here, but it means you can run ABM strategies. So ABM are account-based marketing strategies. So effectively what account-based marketing is you reverse the purchase funnel, you reverse the funnel. So you start really, really narrow with company names. And then, so you're hyper targeted with a small list of basically the large companies you're like, we want to sell to this company. And you target all the contacts there, and then you filter from that stage. So you filter from the contact people who are the decision makers within those companies. So you can advertise directly to them on LinkedIn, which is very handy if you want to sell them something. And then you build it out there. But that's an ABM strategy. I won't go into that too much detail for that. I don't think it's relevant for most people. But yeah, on LinkedIn as well, you have direct message ad capabilities. So, there are conversation ads, there are direct message ads. Out of those two, I prefer conversation ads. I think they work better. Well, not that I think they work better. The testing I've done shows they work better. But there is some key caveats to that. You need to sort of incentivize people to have a conversation with you. And again, as I mentioned with Microsoft ads, LinkedIn integrates the audience data with Microsoft. So it's just a win-win. Those two platforms in tandem, you get more data out of both. Cons, much higher CPCs than some other channels. Like shockingly more expensive, but that's because the targeting is so good. So yeah, and it's generally used for B2B. It requires consistent optimization to protect the ROI due to that. A click is quite expensive. So yeah, and it's not very suitable for e-commerce. So as I mentioned, it's largely used for B2B platforms. So if you are in the e-commerce space, LinkedIn wouldn't be, number one expansion unless you have a reason. It's not completely unsuitable, but it is not the first go-to if you're running an e-commerce business, really. Amazon ads. Now, I like that a lot of you said that you've used this because I have a lot of personal experience with Amazon ads, but I also know that they can be quite scary for people because Amazon it's a big marketplace and it's very, very good. If you're looking at it, particularly for e-commerce, I wouldn't advertise B2B there, but for e-commerce, but it is a bit scary and a bit daunting when you're looking at it, from when you've never done it before. So I get that. They obviously run on the Amazon shopping website and the affiliated partner sites, affiliated, that's not a word. And then you set up, requires a business account. And then a few specifics around your delivery and warehousing options, which sort of comes into like fulfilled by Amazon FBA, that sort of thing, which I'll go on to. Now, I will just say from my perspective, and what I've done in the past, if you're using, Google ads and Amazon together for an e-commerce business, they can become a powerhouse of revenue. They have to be done properly though. And there are trade-offs for each one. So yeah, I mean, the pros of Amazon ads, it reaches millions of people a month on a purchase intent platform. that's kind of important. People go to Amazon to buy things. They don't go to Amazon to browse. You know, they might price check, but they're in the market to buy something at that stage. So it's a purchase intent platform. There is commercial intent there for every user pretty much on Amazon. They're either checking a price or they're buying something. So it's a very good platform to be on, because it can generate a very large revenue stream quite quickly. I've seen it pick up revenue very, very quickly for some clients, for some accounts. You get it right, it goes well. FBA, so fulfilled by Amazon, can be utilized to make shipping and return handling even easier for businesses. You know, particularly if you're a smaller business, you don't have the capacity to, you know, have your own warehousing, that sort of thing. You know, I am sure some of you are there at the moment, or you've been there where you've got stuff in your garage that you're shipping out. Yeah, I've certainly been there. So yeah, you know, FBA makes that a lot easier. Cons. So the biggest con that I experience when I have conversations with people about Amazon is the fees for Amazon. They are high. They are quite considered high considering the platform. And a lot of people just think it's the 15% seller fee on all products, sort of, that you have to start with, but you have additional fees there. So you have fulfillment fees. You have other fees such as storage fees, sort of depending on how long your stock sits in the Amazon fulfillment center. You know, and there are other fees for sort of return handling and penalty fees if shipping information or product information, you know, barcode issues, etc., are wrong on any of your stock. And this puts a lot of people off when they start deep diving into it. They go, oh, I want to run on Amazon. And then they start speaking to Amazon. They're like, oh, well, I've got this fee, I've got this fee, I've got that fee, I've got that fee. It's like, well, most of those fees aren't applicable, providing you get it right. You know, the only ones you're going to have to pay is the seller fee. But it is a quick way to put people off. So that's why I mentioned them. I would largely say, however, it is worth it, providing you can limit the mistakes and, you know, and you have the inventory to warrant it. Talked a lot about fees, but Amazon is a good channel, particularly for e-commerce. I mean, Amazon's doing all right, aren't they? So must say something. Another con is a competitive market. It is a very competitive market. It requires constant management. You know, there are lots of sellers on Amazon. New ones pop up every day. I think some of the highlights I've seen, there was like tracking a product, and there was probably the product, and there was over 250,000 sellers selling this one product on Amazon. So it can be very competitive. Yeah, most of those people don't get a look in. So pick your products, do your research. And then there's another one that many factors on Amazon affect the performance, sort of including your reviews and the brand registration. A lot of people don't know that. If you don't register your brand, registered brands perform much better and have pushed up the results in Amazon. So missing these can hinder performance. So which is why if you've ever shopped on Amazon, you're looking at them, you see random brands that are just a string of letters and numbers. And it's like, well, how can that be a brand name? It's because they've just taken it and they've registered it as a brand name with Amazon because it improves their performance. It's just not actually their brand name. There's, you know, all those knockoff things you get from China and everywhere else. That's why they register the brands as random strings of letters and numbers. So there you are, a little tidbit there that opens your eyes a bit to the way Amazon works. But yeah, Amazon shoppers, a key con here is the key thing to keep in mind is that Amazon shoppers are loyal to Amazon, the Amazon website. So your brand recognition will lower off the platform. If people know you as a brand that they buy on Amazon, you know, they are always going to buy it from Amazon. The way to combat that slightly is to have two separate prices. So you have the Amazon price, which is usually more expensive, I would say. It should be, because you have to factor in the fees and everything else. And then you have your own price on your own website. So if people do want to be, you know, price savvy, and that is a consideration for them, they can shop around and they can find you and get it cheaper. But most people who shop on Amazon will always shop on Amazon. So just keeping that in mind. So I realize that my slides aren't. There we are. Okay. Yeah, I apologize, Jane. I just realized that, you know. Yes, moving on. So TikTok shop ads. So I don't know if any of you are using TikTok shop, but yeah, ads run on the TikTok social platform shop area. So setup requires a seller account and then, you know, completing the onboarding process. But this is fairly standard and easy for most businesses. Is everyone seeing the pros and cons slide now? So I realize there's a delay. I'm seeing it, but is everyone else seeing it?
We're on TikTok shop pros and cons. Sorry, it takes ages to get back and get the mic on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. As long as everyone's seen it now, yeah, cool. Okay, so yep, again, a key one here. So a key pro here. Sorry, I put my teeth in. On platform purchases provide a seamless shopping experience. So again, that 81% of people who buy directly on platform, TikTok obviously makes that very easy to do. Another pro is that it opens up influencer opportunities. Now, I hate saying the word influencer because, you know, it has a negative connotation in the news and things like that now, or within people's minds, but they are influencers, you know, and the influencers garner trust within the platform and see higher conversion rates as a result. So 50% of users purchase based on influencer affiliation on TikTok, and that's TikTok's own numbers, where based on actual revenue. So
Martin, you might not be able to go through every point because you've got 15 minutes, and
yeah, no,
warn you'll run out of time if you're not careful.
I will speed up. I apologize. I was worried about this. Yeah, so yeah, but effectively TikTok, you know, there are some major benefits to TikTok. You can get, if you're lucky enough to get caught on the viral trends as well, you know, they're common, which can lead to a very large brand exposure. Some of the cons, it's a content heavy strategy. So you need the content there, you need the video. Although it's on TikTok shop, you do need to have a presence on TikTok organic as well. You know, and again, the audience typically isn't looking to buy, so they require convincing. Again, you have to capture their attention. I'm going to speed up. So affiliate ads. I don't know if anyone's running affiliate ads, but they run on an affiliated network of partner sites, basically, that they're referred to as publishers. Setup requires setting commission rates, you know, and the recruitment of publishers within the platform, which can be time consuming. It is made easier by partnering with an affiliate platform such as Awin, for example. That's just one of the many. Yeah, just one of the many partner platforms for affiliates. There are lots. Pros and cons. So it's a commission-based structure for most. So you only pay when a sale is made. You pay that publisher a percentage of what you've agreed beforehand once the sale has been made. So you know you've got that revenue's come in. It offers a very easy entry to voucher code sites as well. So if you want to advertise on voucher code sites, affiliate ads is the key one to do. And I think Awin is actually the main partner for, you know, sort of vouchercodes.co.uk and, you know, Trustpilot and not Trustpilot, sorry. I forgot what's it called.
Goodco?
That's the one. Yep. Yeah. Sorry. Trustpilot on the brain. I don't know why. A few cons. So most are self-managed. So it can become time consuming. You know, you need to manually accept commissions unless you just accept them all automatically. And then you set up offers and expand publisher networks. The one thing I will say here is it requires publishers to actively promote products, which means you're kind of reliant on that happening. So you're relying on them doing it. And publishers tend to only do that if you're giving them the best offers, really. And there are fees to it. I think, yeah, there are fees to the network and any platform, but they are pretty reasonable and inexpensive, but it's just something to consider. Spotify ads. So a lot of people tend not to even think about running Spotify ads. They run on the music app and the web browser, as you would expect. Anyone can set up ads, providing they meet the business requirements and have an active payment method. So pros. So broad reach to a usually highly engaged audience. When people are listening to Spotify, they generally are paying attention to it. They're listening to music. There are very cheap CPMs. So cost per mille, so cost per 1,000 impressions, very, very cheap because it's audio. So, and it's easy to target based on demographics and listening habits. So you can actually get within what those people are listening to, what they're interested in. So you know they're kind of switched on and they're listening. So it is good for that. You know, and a key one is you can potentially reach users where other platforms can't. So for example, whilst people are driving, so most platforms can't reach people while they're driving. Spotify can, because people listen to Spotify whilst they're driving. So some of the cons are brand recall requires repetition. So because it's audio, you have to mention your brand in order for people to remember it quite a few times. And there is no direct to purchase option. So largely, Spotify is considered a brand activation channel. It's not a sales activation channel because people aren't going to go straight away and buy something. You're relying on them. It's awareness. You're relying on them remembering to go and purchase later. And then I'll just mention that the targeted options are limited compared to other platforms. Whilst it's very good at targeting people based on listening habits, you know, if you want to split it out by other demographics, such as, you know, how much they earn, that sort of thing, it's a bit difficult to do on Spotify, whereas you can do on other channels. So for instance, LinkedIn. I'm just really trying to speed up because I've only got 9 minutes left. So programmatic advertising. So ads run, again, a lot of people might not have heard of this, but ads run across a series of networks, reaching a geo-targeted. So you can be really local, you can be global. You know, businesses would usually need to partner with a programmatic platform supplier in order to run programmatic advertising. So it runs across networks that you can't normally reach. So like native networks, display, video, connected TV, and DOOH, which is digital out of home. So those are things like interactive billboards. If any of you have been to a petrol station where they've got those sort of interactive, you know, things in the toilets for whatever reason, I don't know why they're there, but that's an advertising space. That's, you know, that is digital out of home. Or, you know, the big one is obviously like Times Square in New York, where you see all of the interactive, you know, billboards that are electronical there, or in London, you know, across Trafalgar Square, there's a couple there. There is a huge audience reach for them, and it is customizable. So you can look at local or target scale. So you could target literally around postcodes of a certain shop, and you can go, right, and it could be your competitor's shop, for instance. You could do that with digital out of home ads. And it opens up the opportunity to run connected TV as well, which is really, really good for a lot of people, Sky Ad Smart and that sort of thing. So a few of the cons: starting costs can be a lot higher than other platforms. And it's sort of like most suggest a minimum of 10K investment to see scalable results. So it is quite steep to get into it, which is why larger companies tend to use programmatic advertising rather than the smallest, because it's just going to be out of the price range for a lot of people. And it requires a partnership with a platform provider. So that can incur an additional fee or cost, but in my experience, all the ones they're fairly reasonable. Just going to move on from that. Directories. So again, this is for the B2B space. So I'll go into them a bit, but Capterra, if any of you are in the B2B space, I'm sure you've heard of Capterra, or you've heard of Gartner and all their sites they own. But yeah, ads run across a series of directories owned by the parent company. So directories focus largely on B2B SaaS companies, so software as a service. So businesses would usually need to partner with the directory in order to make use of the ad features. And not all of the directories offer a paid ad service. That's something to keep in mind. Pros: probably the best place to reach interested users within the market for purchase of SaaS products, because of the trust factor there, and people are actively searching. They're not even wasting their time searching on Google. They go straight to the directory and they compare you against your competitors directly. It's basically Amazon for B2B SaaS. So yeah, it's a good way to have it. It's also very easy to see a snapshot of who you're directly competing against because of that reason. You can see all your competitors on that same platform, and you can see what they're offering, and you can see their pros, you know, sort of their key USPs, their pros and cons versus your pros and cons. So that's a good way to know if, like, oh, hang on, they do this much better than we do. Should probably work on that. And then the biggest con here is that starting costs can be higher than a lot of other platforms, and there are usually additional fees. Whew, made it. Right, conclusions. So had to rush it a little bit. I apologize, but yeah, I just got timing. I just talk too much, Anne, I think. So conclusion. So identifying common signs within your current marketing platforms, will help you identify the need to expand to new ones. And the key thing for me is prevent future problems of your business. So as I mentioned, if you're overly reliant, or you're seeing diminishing returns, you're going to be in hot water soon. It might not be now, might be in a year, might be in 2, might be in 5 years, but eventually that problem is going to rear its ugly head again, and you need to deal with it. So expanding early and knowing that's much better to do than wait. Treatment is better than the cure, as they say. Using only one platform of your advertising strategy prevents you from reaching your TAM, your total addressable market. So yeah, like I said, using Google Ads, you won't reach people on Meta. You can't reach people who are listening on Spotify, for instance. So expanding channels is vital for that. Multiple touchpoint customer journeys make it impossible to reach users via one platform only. As I said, average of 8, but it's actually up to 50. So very, very important to be in more places. Google isn't everywhere. And then social media users prefer purchasing on platform. So it's a great tactic to increase conversions. Reach those people on that platform, get them to purchase directly there. And then just the key thing, which I always want to push, and I say this so many times to people, the best marketing strategies utilize multiple platforms for specific goals from that platform, all working together in an omni-channel strategy to achieve an overall business goal. So omni-channel is they're all working together for the same goal, the same business objective. Now, I realize that might seem like common sense, but it does need to be said. People get dug down. If they're earning 90% of their revenue from one channel, they're like, oh, well, we'll just put more money in that channel. Very dangerous. You need to look at other channels, and you need to future-proof your marketing, really.
Excellent. Okay. Well, there's lots of chat going on. The general impression was that we needed more time. And they've all said, oh, could we have a longer workshop? But actually, our normal approach is to deep dive into these separately. So I think what we need to do is feedback for next quarter that we should have separate sessions on programmatic. We could do something on sound and, shopping and Amazon Marketplace ads and things like that. I think that would be a really good approach because people are asking lots of questions. They're sending lots of love. While they're sending lots of love, I'm going to use that as an opportunity for people to actually send us a nice review or send Martin a nice review. So if you like what you've heard today or you like the way that Martin's presented, please can you click on here and go and add a review for Martin, because it's looks great on his when we do quarterly reviews and such like that.
And Anne's thinking about the rota for the next webinar. She's going to.
I am. You're yeah. So there was a couple of specific questions. Some of the bootcamp people are asking about links to their timesheets. The bootcamp team will send that out, so don't worry about that. We'll send the video around in a couple of hours. Lots of love coming in. Lots of thank you, which is great. Lots of very informative. There was a question from Mark Betts, which is about a specific question regarding his circumstances, and which is, what paid advertising do you recommend business offering training to professionals? Our target audience is healthcare, and we use Google Ads. There's small number of ads on LinkedIn. We've tried Meta, but tend to get a lot of spammy message, etc., from the platform. I'll do my impersonation, my answer first, and then I'll pass it over to Martin. If you think of what we do with our skills bootcamp, we actually use Meta Facebook ad lead generation ads. So we get people to complete the ad, the lead form actually in Meta, and then we send them through automation. We send them an email and a WhatsApp message. That means that we are able to get a lot more people to actually apply than just getting spammy, poor quality leads. But in that circumstances, if we had 100 leads, we'd probably get 20 would, maybe 25 would fill in an application form, and only 10 of those would actually apply for, would actually sign up for the course. So it is still quite expensive to do lead generation, and you've got to look at the amount of money that you're going to make. But Martin, if you were just doing this without our academy experience, what would you recommend for this particular sector?
Yeah, so for healthcare, it can be difficult. You're also going to hit more compliance issues. I'm sure you're aware of those. But yeah, if you're LinkedIn, I suppose if it's a case of not knowing the product, are you using any
training?
Sorry?
It was training for healthcare.
Training for healthcare. Oh, okay, excellent. I mean, are you using any ABM tactics on LinkedIn?
Okay, you need to explain what ABM is. Most people
account-based marketing. So, for instance, if you know there are specific people, so for hospitals, for instance, people who work at hospitals, you know their names, you know they have a LinkedIn page. You know, are you directly marketing to those accounts? So again, it's reversing the customer funnel. So the user journey is normally, you know, prospects at the very top, and then, sorry, I'm doing a filter on a camera you can't see here. Yeah, so basically you have the broad awareness of people who are, you know, you would target at the top. You basically turn that funnel upside down. So you start very hyper targeted. So you have the 5, 10, 15 accounts or hospitals or, you know, healthcare providers that you know would be interested or benefit from your training. You start by targeting those people at a company level on LinkedIn, and then you identify, you know, the key decision makers that you need to reach. So you filter outwards from there, and you reach all those people, and then you reach them with sort of conversation ads where you offer incentives to talk to you. For ABM, it generally is a good idea if you're using conversation ads on LinkedIn to offer an incentive, which is usually all the testing I did previously. The best one to do that was offering a voucher code for Amazon. And it can get quite expensive. I think because we were looking at enterprise clients for this particular study, it was like a £250 Amazon voucher code, which might be beyond reach, you know, but people will then speak to you. They will actually then have a conversation with you.
Yeah, and video view ads are very cheap on LinkedIn compared with everything else as well, aren't they? So.
Certainly for prospecting, yeah, video view ads, although LinkedIn is expensive, video view ads are still generally cheap. So that's always worth doing. But yeah, that's how I would look at it, coming just from that limited information. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, there's some people asking about vacancies at Annika, which unfortunately we haven't got at the moment. But apart from that, I think we've answered all the questions. People are liking the fact that you keep your camera on. I thought the webinars we always had the camera on, so I think we need to just check in and make sure next week that happens as well, because generally we do like to have the camera on with webinars. I think that's it for everybody. So have a great weekend. As I said, the video will come out in a couple of hours. And thank you if you have given Martin a review. I think as his first webinar, that was an incredible success. So unfortunately, you're going to be roped in for some more, mate. So
that's it's my first webinar for Anna. I've done lots before, but yeah, my first for you, I think. So yeah, that's fine. Thank you, everybody.
Brilliant. Well, I loved it, and thank you very much. So,
thank you so much, Martin. It was really, really interesting.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.